My name is Marissa Hale, and I never imagined that the day meant to join two families would nearly tear mine apart. I'm 53, a mother of three, but this story belongs to my oldest son, Landon. He's the kind of man any mother would be proud of. Steady, honest, gentle without being weak. But on the day of his wedding, I watched him crumble in front of 200 people, and that moment lit a fire in me I didn't know I carried. The church smelled of lavender and polished wood. Soft lights glowed along the aisles, casting everything in a warm, hopeful haze. Landon stood at the altar in a charcoal suit he'd saved 3 months to buy, his shoulders square but trembling slightly. He wasn't nervous about the vows. No, that boy loved his bride fiercely. He was nervous about something else, something that had been haunting us for months: her father. Victor Langford, the bride's father, was a man people were afraid to speak over. He owned 3 real estate companies, had money flowing from all the wrong places, and carried himself like the world owed him respect. People didn't admire him, they feared him. And fear makes people blind. But not me. I had felt something was wrong with that man from the moment I heard his name. And on the evening Landon brought his fiancée, Elena, to dinner for the first time, I saw the way her smile faded whenever "my father this" or "my father that" came up. That was the first crack. And cracks always lead somewhere dark. Still, nothing prepared me for what happened during the wedding dinner. After the ceremony, the reception hall glowed with golden lights. Crystal glasses chimed, and everyone laughed as if the world were perfect. Elena was radiant. Landon couldn't stop looking at her. And well, I was holding on to hope that maybe, just maybe, Victor Langford would behave like a decent human for one night. That hope shattered when he took the microphone. He strutted to the center of the room with the confidence of a man who believed everyone existed for his entertainment. The music quieted, the guests leaned in, and he raised his champagne glass with a dramatic sigh. "I suppose," he said loudly, "this is the moment I speak about my daughter's, unusual choice." People left politely, not knowing where he was going. He pointed at Landon, "My son, my boy," and smirked. "Elena has always been stubborn, always insisted on doing things her own way. And today she insisted on marrying a man who, well, bless his heart, means well, but doesn't exactly rise to her level." The room laughed. But Landon went pale. He continued, "If my daughter wants to spend her life with a man who's, let's be honest, a bit of a simpleton, then who am I to stop her?" People laughed. I did not. Landon's fingers shook. He stared at the floor, humiliated, stripped bare in the cruelest moment of his life. And right then, something inside me snapped, because Victor Langford thought no one knew his secrets. He thought his money would protect him. He thought his lies were buried, but I knew. I had proof, and he had just handed me the perfect stage. I wasn't going to expose him yet, not in part 1. But this was the moment I decided. If he dared hurt my son again, I would burn his entire empire to ash. But Victor had no idea that months before that wedding, I had already begun digging into his life, and what I discovered was worse than anything I ever imagined. People think intuition is just a feeling, some whisper in the back of your mind, but they're wrong. Intuition is a warning, an alarm bell ringing long before the danger becomes visible, and mine began screaming the moment Landon first mentioned the Langfords. It was January, cold, bleak, the kind of winter that makes the whole world feel tired. Landon and I were in the kitchen, sipping cinnamon coffee the way we did every Sunday. He kept smiling at his phone, trying to hide it, which was pointless. I'd known that boy since he took his first breath. I knew when something tugged at his heart.
"Mom," he said finally, his voice soft, "I met someone." I felt a warmth spread in my chest. "Oh, what's her name?" "Elena." He said her name like it was a secret prayer he hoped the universe would protect. I knew then that this wasn't a crush. This was something deeper. She's an architecture student, smart, thoughtful. She makes me feel understood. I smiled. My son had always been quiet, a man of few words but deep feelings. If someone made him open up, she had to be special. "What about her family?" I asked casually. And that's when it happened. The shift. He hesitated, just long enough for me to catch it. "Well, her father owns some real estate firms. Langford Development, Langford Holdings, that kind of thing." The moment I heard Langford, something inside me twisted. Langford. Why did that name feel like a shadow? I don't know. Not yet. But I made a mental note of it. The next week, Elena came to dinner. She was lovely, brown curls falling freely over her shoulders, soft hazel eyes, a quiet grace. She carried herself like someone raised in a rich home but not corrupted by it. She hugged me politely. "Mrs. Hill, thank you for having me." We cooked together. She helped set the table. She laughed with Landon in the kitchen. Everything about her felt genuine until I asked about her family. "How are your parents?" I said, placing salad bowls on the table. Her face stiffened for just a moment. "My mom is sweet. My dad is complicated." I paused. "Complicated how?" She shrugged, looking down at her plate. "He expects perfection. He's never satisfied. I haven't told him about Landon yet." Landon nearly dropped his fork. "Elena." She sighed. "You know how he is. He thinks you need to be from a certain social tier to be worthy of his attention." My eyebrows rose. "And what does he think counts as worthy?" "Money," she whispered. "Connections. Power." My hands tightened around my napkin. Power. That word always hides something dark behind it. Months passed, and Landon grew closer. Every day he came home happier, lighter, like falling in love made his world brighter. But behind that joy lurked the shadow of her father. One evening, Landon came home drenched from the rain, his shoulders tense. "Mom," he said, "I need to tell you something." We sat by the window as raindrops streaked down the glass. "I met Elena's dad tonight," he said quietly. My stomach tightened. "And?" He interrogated me, asked how much I make, how much I've saved, whether I own property. He even asked if my car was paid off. I felt heat rising behind my eyes. "And what did you tell him?" "The truth." And he laughed, Mom. He laughed in my face. My jaw clenched so hard it hurt. "And he told Elena," Landon continued, his voice breaking a little, "that she should aim higher." That was it. That was the moment I decided I needed to look deeper into Victor Langford's life, because men who judge others so harshly are almost always hiding something. And I was right. I was so very right. The next week, I saw something that turned my suspicion into cold, hard certainty, and it changed everything.
Sometimes the truth doesn't arrive with a scream. Sometimes it whispers, then waits for you to look it straight in the face. It happened on a Thursday afternoon. I had stopped by a small downtown cafe after running errands, an old brick place with overgrown ivy in the windows and cinnamon rolls that were worth every calorie. I sat by the window, sipping tea, watching cars drift past. And then I saw him, Victor Langford. Not in a business suit, not surrounded by employees, not accompanied by his picture-perfect wife. No, this time he was with someone else, a woman much younger than me, maybe in her early 30s, with sun-kissed skin and long, wavy hair. She laughed loudly, comfortably. Her hand rested on his forearm with the ease of someone who had been doing it for years. But that wasn't what froze my breath. What froze me were the two children, a girl around 6 years old and the little boy no older than 4, calling him a word that shattered everything. "Daddy!" Victor leaned down, kissed the little girl's forehead, then smiled at the woman like she was the center of his universe. And right then, the whole picture snapped into place. This wasn't a business meeting. This wasn't a friendly lunch. This was a secret family, a second life, a world Elena had no idea existed. My stomach twisted. My hands began to shake. I set my cup down before it slipped from my fingers. For a moment, the entire cafe felt like it tilted sideways. I watched Victor, powerful, arrogant Victor, pick up the boy and twirl him playfully, the way fathers do when they think no one is watching. He thought no one would ever see him there, but I did. I paid my bill and hurried to my car, heart pounding. I sat behind the wheel, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. If Victor had another family, then everything he presented to the world, the fancy suits, the charity galas, the speeches about integrity, was a lie. A massive, deliberate lie. And if he could lie that easily to his own daughter, what else was he hiding? Something told me this wasn't just about infidelity. People like Victor rarely stop at one sin. They stack them like cards. And eventually, the entire house collapses. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his hand on that woman's lower back. I heard the children laughing. I saw his flawless, rehearsed smile, so different from the cold smirk he gave my son. And I knew one truth. If Landon married into that family without knowing the truth, he would be stepping into a world built on rot. I had two choices: stay silent and let my son walk blindly into the fire, or dig deeper and do whatever it took to protect him. Silence was never an option. The next morning, I called a friend of mine from years back, a woman who'd gone through her own messy divorce. She gave me the number of a private investigator she swore by. His name is Rowan Dunn. He uncovers things most people can't even imagine, and he's discreet. Discreet was exactly what I needed. I found myself standing outside Rowan's small office an hour later. It was located above an old tailor shop, the kind of place most people would walk past without noticing. I climbed the creaky wooden stairs and knocked. "Come in," a deep voice called. Rowan was a quiet man, with sharp eyes and a desk full of messy files. He didn't smile, he didn't greet me warmly. He simply waited. "How can I help you?" he asked. "I need the truth," I whispered, "about a man named Victor Langford." Rowan leaned back slowly, studying me. "Truth," he said, "always comes with a cost." I took a breath. I'm willing to pay it. And with that, the investigation began. Within a week, Rowan returned with a revelation so dark, so catastrophic, that even I wasn't prepared for it. Rowan worked fast, faster than I expected, faster than I was prepared for. 5 days after I hired him, he called me in a low, urgent voice. "Miss Hale, I have what you asked for, but you need to come in. This isn't something I can tell you over the phone." My stomach dropped. Nothing good ever starts with, "We need to talk in person." I drove to his office, my hands trembling the entire way. The sky was overcast, the kind that makes the city feel quieter, heavier. When I arrived, Rowan didn't greet me with a handshake or even a nod.
He simply gestured toward the chair across from his desk. Then he pushed a thick manila folder toward me. "You should sit," he said. I did. And then he opened the folder. The first page was a photograph. Victor walking hand in hand with the woman I had seen at the cafe. Behind them, the children skipped ahead laughing. My stomach twisted, but that wasn't the worst part. Rowan flipped to the next set of documents. Bank statements, transfers, suspicious withdrawals. He spoke calmly, as if he were reading out grocery items. Victor Langford has been financially supporting this second family for 6 years. Rent, school fees, private health care, vacations, all paid through a series of accounts linked back to his companies. I blinked. Companies? Not his personal income? Rowan's face didn't change. Correct. He used corporate funds. Langford Development is essentially footing the bill. Corporate theft, fraud, felonies. My pulse roared in my ears. "That's not all," Rowan said, flipping to another stack of papers. I dug into his work history. Audits, lawsuits, contracts. He handed me a page with highlighted lines. Victor is involved in at least 3 ongoing legal disputes with suppliers who claim they were never paid. 2 construction projects were halted due to unexpected financial difficulties. 1 government housing contract is under review because the funds allocated don't match the work completed. I stared at him. "You're saying he's been stealing money?" Rowan inhaled deeply. "To put it plainly, yes, millions." Millions. The number repeated in my head like an echo I couldn't silence. "And the company?" I asked softly. Rowan looked straight into my eyes. "Langford Development is months away from financial collapse." I breath caught. If the company fell, if the government stepped in, if the lawsuits went public, Elena, her mother, her sisters, their entire world would turn to dust, and Landon, my son, would be tied to a family drowning in scandal. Rowan pushed the final document across the table. "And one more thing." I wasn't ready for one more thing, but life doesn't wait for readiness. "This," he said, "is from a confidential source inside the State Fraud Bureau. They suspect Victor will be indicted soon. 3 months, maybe less." I pressed my fingers to my temples. Victor wasn't just arrogant. He wasn't just manipulative. He wasn't just unfaithful. He was a ticking bomb, a man living on borrowed time and stolen money, whose entire empire could crumble any moment. "And Elena?" I asked softly. "Does she know any of this?" Rowan shook his head. "No, she knows nothing." I closed the folder slowly, like I was sealing something dangerous. "If this gets out," I whispered, "it will destroy her." Rowan nodded. "It will destroy all of them." I stared at the papers again. Victor had built his legacy on lies, and now the ground beneath him was crumbling. But one thing terrified me more than anything. If he sensed that someone, anyone, was onto him, he would lash out hard. And my son, as gentle as he was, would be in the crossfire. I left Rowan's office with the folder clutched to my chest like a bomb, because that's exactly what it was. A bomb that could erase the Langford name in a single explosion. And I knew, whether I wanted it or not, that someday soon, I would be the one forced to light the fuse. But before the explosion, there was one final encounter, one dinner where Victor Langford revealed exactly what kind of monster he truly was.
2 weeks before the wedding, Landon came home with an excitement I hadn't seen in months. "Mom," he said, running a hand through his hair, "Elena's family invited us to a rehearsal dinner. Her dad wants to properly welcome us." Properly welcome. Those words were poison dressed in silk. Every instinct in me screamed, "Don't go," but Landon looked hopeful, hopeful enough to make me swallow the dread clawing up my throat. So I agreed. The Langfords' estate sat at the edge of the city, hidden behind tall iron gates and a driveway lined with expensive cars. The house itself was enormous. Glass walls, marble floors, the kind of place designed to make guests feel small. Except I didn't feel small. I felt furious. Because now I knew the truth Victor hid behind those perfect walls. Elena's family greeted us warmly. Teresa Langford was a fragile woman, elegant, but tired, like someone who slept with one eye open. Her smile was soft but hollow, the smile of a woman who had survived disappointment for so long it became normal. The dining room was set for 20, candles flickering on a long polished table. Elena hugged her mother, kissed her sisters, and then turned to me with a warmth that soothed my nerves. "I'm so happy you're here, Marissa." I held her hands. I wouldn't miss it for the world. Then he arrived, Victor Langford. His presence sucked the air from the room, like a storm cloud with a smile. He greeted the guests like he owned their souls, shaking hands, offering compliments that dripped with arrogance. And then he reached me. "Mrs. Hale," he said with a charming grin, "lovely to finally welcome you into our home." I met his eyes without blinking. "Thank you for having us." His grin wavered, just slightly. He knew I wasn't intimidated. Good. Dinner began with small talk. Victor dominated every conversation, bragging about deals, investments, properties, his unmatched business instincts. He talked as if he weren't weeks away from an indictment. Meanwhile, Elena barely touched her food. Landon noticed. "You okay?" he whispered. She forced a smile. "Just nervous." I could tell she was lying. Halfway through the meal, Victor stood suddenly and tapped his glass. "Everyone," he announced, "I'd like to share a few words." My stomach tightened. He walked behind Landon's chair and rested a heavy hand on his shoulder, a gesture that felt more like a warning than affection. "My daughter Elena has always been gifted," he said proudly. "Bright, accomplished, raised to uphold the Langford standard." He paused. Then he squeezed Landon's shoulder. "And fortunately, she's chosen to marry a man who, while not exactly on our level, has a good heart." Landon stiffened. He continued, "I mean, sure, he doesn't have the income or the pedigree we're used to, but my daughter insisted." Guests chuckled. My blood boiled. Victor lowered his voice just enough that only our table heard. "Let's hope he can rise to the occasion." Teresa flinched. Elena closed her eyes. Landon swallowed hard. But Victor wasn't done. After dessert, he pulled me aside into his study. The door clicked shut behind us. "Marissa," he said, dropping the friendly facade, "let's be honest. Your son is punching far above his weight." I stared at him. "Say what you have to say." He leaned forward. "I invested a lot into building this family name, and I'll be damned if some middle-class dreamer drags it down." My fists clenched. He smirked. "Let's hope Landon can keep Elena comfortable, because if he can't, she'll always have me." That was it. That was the moment he crossed a line there was no coming back from. He didn't disrespect my son. He threatened his future. I walked out of that study with fire in my lungs and a truth burning in my purse, because I had enough evidence to destroy him. And if he humiliated my son again, I wouldn't hesitate. But the real breaking point didn't come at that dinner. It arrived on the wedding day when Victor grabbed a microphone and shattered the last piece of mercy I had for him. The morning of the wedding felt unreal, like the world held its breath for a moment too long. Sunlight streamed through stained glass windows, scattering warm colors across the church pews. Guests arrived in elegant clothes, whispering with excitement. Musicians tuned their instruments. Flowers filled the air with the scent of roses and eucalyptus. It should have been perfect, and for a little while it was.
Landon stood at the altar in his tailored suit, trying to hide the tremble in his hands. He kept exhaling deeply as if reminding himself to stay grounded. I touched his arm gently. "You look handsome," I whispered. He gave a small smile. "I just want this day to be good, Mom." I said, "It will," though my chest tightened with fear I wouldn't admit. Then the music shifted and everyone rose. Elena appeared at the back of the church, her arm linked with her mother's, not her father's. That alone spoke volumes. She was breathtaking. Her lace gown flowed like water, her veil trailing behind her like a soft, silvery cloud. Tears shone in her eyes when she saw Landon waiting. For a moment, nothing else mattered. She reached him. They took each other's hands. The ceremony began with soft hymns, heartfelt vows, and a tenderness that made even strangers tear up. Landon's voice shook as he promised, "I will protect you, love you, and choose you every day." Elena's lips trembled. "You are the safest place I've ever known." The crowd sighed. The officiator smiled. This was love, honest, vulnerable, unconditional. And then Victor ruined it. The moment, everything cracked. The ceremony ended. Applause filled the church. Guests filed out toward the reception hall, buzzing with joy. I should have been relieved. Instead, my instincts churned. Victor had been too quiet, too still. His smile was tight, forced, like a predator waiting for the right moment. And I was right. At the reception, just after the newlyweds finished their first dance, Victor walked to the DJ booth, grabbed the microphone, and tapped it loudly. The room quieted. He cleared his throat dramatically. "Ladies and gentlemen, as the father of the bride," he paused, scanning the crowd as if he were delivering a performance, "I'd like to give a few words." My stomach sank. Elena's face drained of color. Landon subtly shook his head, silently begging him not to do whatever he was planning. But Victor thrived on control. He raised his clam-ding glass. "My daughter has always made surprising decisions." Soft laughter. He turned toward Landon, my child, and smirked. "And choosing a man of his limited means was certainly one of them." Gasps rippled through the room. Elena whispered desperately, "Dad, stop." He ignored her. "I just hope," Victor continued loudly, "that she won't regret marrying someone who can barely afford to take her on a decent honeymoon." People shifted in their chairs. Some looked down, others pretended to laugh. Landon froze. His shoulders hunched slightly as if the words physically struck him. Victor lifted the microphone closer. "And let's pray," he added mockingly, "that my daughter won't be supporting him within a year." A few distant laughs. Nervous, uncertain, cruel. Elena covered her face. Teresa stared at the tablecloth, shame weighing on her like a stone. And my son, my sweet, good-hearted son, stood in silence, humiliated in front of everyone he loved. A mother only breaks once. My fingers curled around the back of my chair. I felt heat crawl up my throat, not from embarrassment, but from rage that felt almost volcanic. I had endured this man's arrogance, his threats, his cruelty, his double life, his crimes. But this, publicly shattering my son's dignity, this was the moment Mercy died. When his toast ended, the silence in the room was suffocating. But inside my mind, a single clear thought echoed. It's time. I didn't know it yet, but the next hour would change everything. Because Victor wasn't done humiliating my son, and I wasn't done protecting him. Not even close. The moment we stepped outside that reception hall, Victor cornered my son, and what he said next forced me to unleash the truth I'd been holding.
The air outside the reception hall hit like a cold wave. Guests drifted around the garden, pretending to admire the lanterns strung across the trees. But everyone felt the tension. People always feel it when cruelty has just walked through the room. Landon stepped outside for air, shoulders rigid, jaw clenched so tightly a vein pulsed along his temple. He wasn't crying. My son rarely cried, but his silence carried more pain than tears ever could. I followed him, ready to wrap him in the kind of comfort only a mother can give. But before I reached him, a third voice sliced through the night like a blade dipped in ice. "Well," Victor said behind us, "that could have gone worse." Landon stiffened. I turned slowly. Victor approached with the swagger of a man who believed he owned the night sky. His tie was loosened, his expression smug, utterly unbothered by the wreckage he left behind. "Why are you out here sulking, son?" he asked, stepping closer. "It was just a joke." Landon's fists curled. "You embarrassed my wife. You embarrassed me." Victor snorted. "If you're that sensitive, marriage is going to hit you like a train." I moved between them instinctively. "That's enough." Victor raised an eyebrow at me. "Ah, Mrs. Hale, still pretending your boy is some untouchable saint." My jaw tightened. "I'm asking you to walk away." He laughed, low, mocking. "Or what? You'll give me a stern lecture?" The kind of laugh that makes your skin crawl. He leaned in closer, speaking to Landon like he was scolding a pet misbehaving. "You don't belong in this family. You know it, I know it, and sooner or later Alina will know it too." "Victor," I warned. He ignored me, eyes locked on my son. "You think a lifetime of sweet words will keep her satisfied? Do you really think she won't wake up one day and realize she married beneath her?" Landon's breath caught. And that's when Victor delivered the final blow. "She deserves a man who can give her the world, not someone who can barely afford to give her options." Silence. Sharp. Deadly. A mother knows when her child has reached his breaking point, and Landon hit his. His shoulders slumped, his eyes dropped to the ground, and I saw him swallow the last piece of pride Victor hadn't already crushed. That was it. That was the moment something ancient and fierce burst open inside me. I stepped forward slowly, calmly, deliberately, until I stood inches from Victor Langford, the man who had tormented my son for months. "You're done," I said softly. "Excuse me?" "You're done humiliating my son, done poisoning your daughter's happiness, done strutting around like a king when you know damn well your kingdom is made of sand." Victor's face twitched, a flash of unease breaking through his arrogance. "What are you talking about?" I smiled, not with kindness, but with clarity. "I know." His eyebrows drew together. "Know what?" "Everything." I watched the color drain from his face in real time. The second family, the stolen corporate funds, the lawsuits, the impending indictment. He didn't know which secret I meant, because he had too many to choose from. "You've been busy, very busy, and very careless." Victor's voice dropped, low and dangerous. "Marissa, what did you do?" "Nothing yet," I answered. "But I promised myself one thing. If you ever hurt my son again, I would bury every lie you've ever built your life on." The garden fell silent. Wind rustled the lanterns. Somewhere inside, music tried to soften the night, but no sound could soften the truth between us now. Victor stepped back, suddenly aware that the ground under him was shifting. "You don't want to start this," he whispered. "Oh, but you already did. And now you don't get to choose how it ends." His throat bobbed. For the first time, Victor Langford looked afraid. Behind us, the reception doors opened. Elena stepped out, her eyes red and frightened. "Dad, what's going on?" Victor straightened instantly, forcing composure back into his spine. "Nothing," he muttered. "Absolutely nothing." But everything had already begun unraveling, and he knew it. What happened next wasn't planned. It wasn't graceful. It was the moment Victor realized I wasn't bluffing, and that I was capable of bringing down his entire life. The night should have ended there. Awkward silence,
Forced smiles, guests pretending they didn't witness a family fracture. But fate has a strange habit of waiting until you think you're safe before twisting the knife. After the confrontation in the garden, Landon and Elena slipped away to breathe, leaving Victor and me standing at opposite ends of the patio like opposing generals before a war. I could feel him watching me, calculating, cornered. He thought he could intimidate me to silence. He was wrong. Inside the reception hall, music played, a soft, romantic song. Guests danced slowly, trying to pretend nothing had happened, but whispers spread like wildfire. People always sense when a storm is coming, and the storm arrived sooner than anyone expected. The final spark. Elena re-entered first, her makeup smudged, her eyes swollen. She tried to smile at guests, but her voice shook each time she thanked someone for coming. Landon came next. He held himself upright, but his spirit looked bruised. When he reached me, I touched his face gently. "You don't deserve this pain," I whispered. He exhaled, broken. "Mom, I'll be fine." But I had already decided my son would not carry this alone. Then Victor walked in. The room shifted immediately, tension rippling like heat waves on asphalt. He straightened his jacket, forced a charismatic smile, and clapped loudly to get everyone's attention again. "As I was saying earlier," he announced, acting as if nothing monstrous had happened, "marriage is about overcoming obstacles." The guests froze. My heart thundered. Elena whispered desperately, "Dad, please stop." But Victor loved an audience too much to stop. He raised his glass and said, "Let's just hope the obstacle this time isn't the groom's lack of ambition." That was it. The line that shattered something inside me that had been holding on by threads. Landon's face collapsed. Elena gasped. Teresa covered her mouth. My hands shook, not with fear, but with a fierce, burning certainty. This was the moment. I stepped forward slowly, deliberately, until I stood inches from Victor Langford, the man who had tormented my son for months. "You're done," I said loudly, enough for every guest to hear. Turned to me, eyes narrowing. "What are you doing? You want to discuss who is or is not worthy of your daughter? Fine. Let's talk about worth." I pulled the phone from my purse. "Let's talk about where your company's money has been going." A wave of murmurs swept the room. Victor's face drained pale. "Don't you dare." "Oh, I dare." I tapped the screen. The projector behind the DJ flickered on. Victims of curiosity always leave their HDMI cables lying around, and on the massive screen appeared something that sucked every bit of air from the room. Photos of Victor with his secret family. The woman. The children. The affection he never gave his own daughter. Gasps, cries. A few people covered their mouths. Elena stumbled backwards as if she'd been struck. "Dad, what is that?" Teresa swayed, gripping a chair. "Victor, is that true?" Victor lunged toward me. "Turn it off. You don't know what you're doing." "Oh, I do," I said, stepping out of reach. Slide after slide appeared next. Bank transfers from Langford Development, payments to the secret family, documentation of corporate theft, pending lawsuits, and evidence of the impending indictment. Guests stared in horror, as if watching a powerful man melt in real time. Victor's mask cracked completely. "Marissa," he shouted, hoarse, "stop this." "No," I said calmly. "You don't get to hide anymore." Elena collapsed into a chair, sobbing. Landon rushed to her, holding her as if she were made of fragile glass. Security tried to step in, but by then the damage was done. Everything he feared, everything he tried to bury, was now public. Victor staggered, gripping the edge of a cable. "You'll ruin us all," he whispered. I stepped closer. "You did that yourself. I just showed everyone who you truly are." The room was frozen, silent, except for Elena's sobs. Victor looked around, realizing no one was on his side. That was the night his empire crumbled, and I wasn't finished yet. But destruction doesn't end with exposure. What happened the next morning was something none of us saw coming.
The sun rose the next morning as if mocking the devastation left behind. Soft golden light spilled across my kitchen counter while the coffee brewed quietly, but nothing felt peaceful. Not after what happened. Not after the truth detonated in front of 200 witnesses. For the first time since the wedding, my phone, usually silent in the early hours, wouldn't stop ringing. Unknown numbers, corporate offices, reporters, even relatives we hadn't heard from in years. Everyone wanted a piece of the story. Everyone wanted to know how the mighty Victor Langford fell. I didn't answer a single call because my only priority was my son. When Landon finally came downstairs, he looked exhausted, eyes puffy, tie still half undone, hair disheveled, but beneath all that, something had changed. The weight he'd been carrying for months was gone. "How's Elena?" I asked gently. He sank into the chair across from me. "She cried all night. She kept saying she didn't know, that she never imagined her father." His voice cracked. He wiped his eyes. "She's ashamed, Mom. Not of me, of him." I touched his hand. "She shouldn't be ashamed of his sins." He nodded weakly. "She said she needs time. She's with her mother right now." "How are you feeling?" I asked softly. He paused. His jaw trembled before he whispered, "Relieved." I blinked. "Relieved?" "Because now I know the truth," he said. "I wasn't losing her. I was drowning in her father's shadow. He never wanted her happiness. He wanted control." He exhaled deeply. "You saved us, Mom." I swallowed the lump in my throat. I did what any mother would. But that wasn't entirely true, and we both knew it. Not every mother would go to war. Not every mother would gather evidence, hire investigators, and expose a powerful man in front of the world. But I did. Because cruelty has a way of camouflaging itself, and someone had to rip the mask off. The fall of Victor Langford. Later that afternoon, the news broke publicly. Someone from the wedding leaked the footage. Maybe a guest, maybe a server, maybe someone who thought they were doing the world justice. It didn't matter. What mattered was the truth was now unavoidable. Real estate tycoon under investigation for fraud. Langford Development collapses amid scandal. Businessman accused of secret second family. The headlines spread like wildfire. By evening, federal agents arrived at the Langford estate. Victor was escorted out past his gates while cameras flashed like lightning around him. He still tried to hold his chin high, but the world had already decided he was no longer a king, just a scared man clinging to a crumbling throne. Teresa filed for legal separation the next day. Elena cut ties with her father. His business partners abandoned him. His company froze operations within 48 hours. I watched it all unfold, not with satisfaction, though many expected that, but with a complex ache. It wasn't joy to see a family destroyed. It was justice, mixed with grief for the innocent who had to watch someone they loved become a stranger before their eyes. A new beginning. 3 weeks later, after the dust began to settle, Elena came to our home. Her eyes were red, but her smile was soft. "Marissa," she said, voice trembling, "thank you." I shook my head. "You don't owe me thanks." "Yes, I do," she insisted. "You saved me from a life built on lies, and you protected the man I love." Then she turned to Landon. And in that moment, standing there in our small kitchen-lit home, I realized something. They weren't broken. They were rebuilding. Together. Landon wrapped an arm around her waist. He said, "We're going to take things slow. No pressure, no rushing. Just healing." I smiled. "That's all of us can do." Elena wiped her eyes. "I want a marriage that starts with truth, not shadows." And for the first time since the wedding, I felt peace settle into my bones. Because sometimes destruction isn't the end. Sometimes it's the clearing of a path that was never meant to stay the same. Victor tried to break my son. Instead, he revealed who Landon truly was. A man worthy of love.
a man strong enough to rise, a man who would never again let someone else define his worth. As for me, I finally understood something too. A mother's strength doesn't come from gentleness. It comes from the fire she unleashes when someone threatens her child. And make no mistake, I would burn the world again if I had to. Because in every story, there's a villain who thinks he's untouchable, and a mother who proves him wrong. If today's story touched your heart or kept you hooked, you can show your love by sending a super thanks. Your support helps me continue creating more powerful life stories for you. Thank you truly for always being so kind and supportive. I can't wait to read your thoughts about this story. On your screen right now, you'll find 2 new stories that I highly recommend, filled with emotions, twists, and lessons. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe for many more inspiring life stories. Until the next one, sending you love, respect, and gratitude. See you in the next story.